Yo, what is up everybody, it's the Great here and welcome back to another Naruto reaction video here today. And today we have a very intriguing and I would say famous topic within the fandom by the Great Six. And as you can tell by the title, this is Minato versus Tobirama, the real winner. So folks, despite this topic being highly debated and or discussed within the fandom, I must truly say that this topic isn't very contentious at all when you look at the empirical evidence that is presented from the narrative. On one side we got Minato, who is heralded as the fastest shinobi of his time, and on the other side we have Tobirama, who is also heralded as the fastest shinobi of his time. However, when the two come into contact during the war arc, and they arrive to the battlefield where Madara, Obito, and the Alliance is present, Tobirama admits blatant inferiority as far as speed is concerned. He blatantly admits inferiority to Minato. How much more simple than that can it get? And furthermore, looking at that statement logically, one, why would he lie about it? There is no reason to conclude that Tobirama would lie or be disingenuous when stating this very fact, right? So him stating that is already, I would say, enough to conclude Minato's superiority, at least in terms of speed. Now, on top of that, if we look at their feats when they were alive, there's enough to conclude that Minato had more impressive feats. Tobirama lost to Kikengu and Ginkaku and had negative encounters on more than one occasion with them and their unit, while Minato casually reacted to a light timer in the 4th Raikage. Casually, by the way. So when comparing these two opponents, right, the Raikage and Ginkaku, it is clear who is superior. Ginkaku and Kinkaku, when they were reanimated, got dealt with Darwin Company, which I think we can all agree are not on the caliber of Minato Namikaze. And the Raikage is able to contend with even KCM1 Naruto as far as speed is concerned. There is a slight inferiority there, but there is a contentious level of relativity between the two, implying his caliber as well. So when looking at Minato and Tobirama, there is clearly an empirical advantage for Minato. However, like I said, this is a very debated and discussed topic, which is why I'm sure Six decided to do this video to kind of clear the air. Or maybe I'm completely wrong and he thinks Tobirama wins. I don't know. But either way, I'm very intrigued to see what Six has to say about this one. But before I begin, anyways, greatly appreciate it. Hit that like button, turn on bell notifications to stay updated with yours truly. And if you enjoy, man, you mess with the kid, make sure to hit that sub button, because once you do, become part of the family forever. But let's not waste any more time, screen. Let's see what Six says today.
Minato versus Tobirama. My position on the outcome of this battle has always been extremely clear. I won't spoil it for the people who don't know, but I've been extremely vocal about that even before I started my YouTube channel. However, we are seemingly getting a new Minato short manga sometime next year, which we don't really know what it will consist of. Maybe it'll be some third war lore or even some time with Minato as Hokage on the battlefield. But it could also just be like a 5-page manga short of Minato just accepting his reward as the #1 voted man. We really don't know. If something changes though, I'll be sure to make an update video. Now, to be honest, there are fairly bad arguments on both sides of the debate here, but since this battle is first and foremost about speed, considering it's the reason why these two characters get compared so heavily in the first place, it's 100% going to be the longest portion of the video. So we'll save that for the later end of the video. However, I do have chapters on the video, so if you want to skip around to see how they compare in speed first, you can skip to that specific part. Debunks, durability, attack potency, speed, and abilities. That will be the different parts of the video, and like I said, there will be a chapter marking them all, so if you want to skip to any specific part of the video, you can do so. I might include some anime things in this video, but for the most part I'll be sticking to the data book and manga for information, considering I think that's the best way to get to a conclusion.
Fair enough.
I should also mention here that there are basically going to be 2 rounds. I'll cover them as they both appear in their respective times as Hokage, and as well as when they were reanimated by Orochimaru in the 4th War. I'm not going to cover any other forms than that, because the basically brain dead Tobirama that Orochimaru summoned against Hiruzen didn't even use flying Raijin or any jutsu besides water jutsu.
Correct.
Not to mention he was clearly much weaker than he is normally.
I'm
also not going to cover Jonin Minato, since he was a Jonin for years and obviously over time he'd just be getting much stronger. I may mention feats or statements that pertain to those forms of the characters, but in terms of actually throwing them into the match, I will not. Before getting directly into the video though, I'd appreciate a like, and if you enjoy Naruto content in general, I'd recommend subscribing as well, as I have a ton of other Naruto videos on my channel you might want to watch. But let's get into Minato versus Tobirama. Durability is one of the easier things to cover here, and since I'm being as fair as possible here, Just being honest, neither of these guys really have any impressive durability feats. Tobirama constantly gets impaled by Madara like 20 times, split in half by Jubito, tandem paper bombs destroyed his whole Edo body, Kennen left him in an almost near-death state. You get the point. Tobirama isn't really tanking anything. Granted, he is up against extremely powerful people most of the time.
Of course.
I'm just getting at the idea. His durability isn't something you're going to be able to put on some super impressive level.
Agreed.
I have reasons for this, but I'll mention them post mentioning Minato's shortcomings in this area as well. Minato had his right arm torn off by Jubito. He then had his left arm ripped off by Madara. And he also, at the beginning of the fight with Obito, got a splinter in his leg. Minato's only potential saving grace in the durability department is him supposedly tanking a kick from one-eyed pre-God Tree Jubi Madara. However, since we know Sage Mode increases your durability to an extreme degree, you can definitely chalk this up to a feat of his enhanced body rather than his base body. However, it does need to be noted that Madara is also in a far more enhanced form than Minato here, being a Jubi Jinchuriki and in Sage Mode. So if you want to take this as far as Minato would have been able to tank a kick from normal Madara as well, feel free to. Just know Madara doesn't have many impressive feats punching or kicking someone outside of the random Jonin in the Shinobi Alliance. And when he's fighting stronger Shinobi, he normally opts to using his Susanoo to fight them. It would give Minato the edge on Tobirama in durability as far as presenting things to be able to bring to the table for each other, but it's completely disingenuous for me to sit here and claim that I didn't think Tobirama was also more durable than these random Jonin in the War Arc.
Of course.
This argument also requires a pretty big assumption that the toughness boost from Sage Mode is equal to or lesser than the dramatic stat boost provided by Sage Mode, which it could in reality be much higher than that. But like I said, even if you accept the argument, which is fine, it doesn't really lead into any advantage over Tobirama. There's also the fact that Madara could simply have just been holding back on his kick when he kicks Minato. It's not all too implied at all that Madara is going all out when kicking Minato away. As for the reasons I think Tobirama and Minato aren't physical tanks, or at least aren't shown to be physical tanks, is because their choice of combat, which mainly revolves around them dodging using Flying Raijin. We know you have to allocate chakra in your body to increase your durability. Naruto kicking away the True-Seeking Orb is said to be due to this. Kabuto taking the Rasengan. It's a fairly simple concept, no need for me to info dump a ton of examples. Point being, this is chakra that these two would rather likely use to try and teleport or catch their opponent off guard. We actually see both Minato and Tobirama doing this on separate occasions. After Madara dodges Tobirama's Flying Raijin slice, we see him knock Tobirama's kunai out of his hand, to which is revealed Tobirama has an FTG tag on his kunai that he then teleports to. Little side note here, in the manga, this is the first time we see Tobirama use this tactic of putting a seal on his kunai, while the anime shows him doing it against Izuna, possibly indicating that the original plan of this was that he got the idea from Minato. Not a scaling thing, just wanted to mention it. Right. After this, it cuts away and obviously Madara has the upper hand, but it's what he says next that's really interesting here. He says it's Tobirama's MO to attack an opponent while they're convinced of victory, indicating that Tobirama set this up from the beginning in order to catch Madara off guard after he disarmed him, but Madara just saw through it, and there's much more to bring up with this interaction, but I'll save that for the speed section of this video. Minato also employs strategy like this. He actually has an entire jutsu named after it, the Flying Raijin level 2. And outside of that, he does it on the Raikage during their first interaction in the Third War. People incorrectly associate Flying Raijin level 2 with a higher form of Flying Raijin, and it's mainly due to a mistranslation. This jutsu is supposed to be called Flying Raijin 2-step or 2-stage because there are 2 stages to the attack. Not that it's a higher level of Flying Raijin in the literal sense. Whatever. Just to quickly wrap up this portion, they aren't durability tank gods because they probably choose to allocate chakra to speed to do combos instead. Next, we'll go over attack potency, or how hard they both hit.
Alright, so I do want to discuss durability here. I think Six made a good point with this entire tangent when it comes to durability. Unfortunately for both combatants, despite who you think wins the overall battle, there isn't much to extrapolate from the narrative to give a concrete scaling as far as the durability is concerned. And the best course of action is certainly not to scale their durability based off their feats against Obito or Jubito most specifically, right? Jubito, despite who you think wins between these two, is clearly far away superior to Minato and Tobirama, right? So them getting obliterated by him does not allow us to deduce much as far as their durability in relation to each other. So like I said, it wouldn't be the best course of action to try to establish durability based off their anti-feats. I wouldn't even call them anti-feats actually, against Jubito. So that's not the best course of action. And Six made another good point. They are not known for their durability anyway, right? They're speedsters. They use finesse. They use timing. They use superior speed to gain the advantage against their opponents, right? So essentially, it is difficult to scale their durability, right? There isn't much for them when it comes to what they're able to tank necessarily. Yes, Tobirama has his feast against Kin and Gin where he did get injured, right? But they did have Ninetales Chakra to be fair. And Minato, we just don't really see him get challenged throughout his career as a shinobi when he's alive. So we really don't have anything to scale his durability based off of, right, when he is alive. He never really gets tagged by anybody. He's too fast, right? And now Tobirama, like I said, we got the Kin and Gin anti-feat. But besides that, there isn't much to say about his durability. And to add on top of that, we really don't know how exactly his skirmish with Kin and Gin those times exactly went. Right? What was he able to tank? What was he not able to tank? We really don't know. So all in all, you can only use speculation and assumption to try and establish Minato and Tobirama's durability, which isn't the most valid and accurate way to logically deduce things. Right? Speculation is a logical strategy of rational deduction you want to avoid, but unfortunately you can't avoid it here. There isn't much empirically for either one of these guys when it comes to the durability, and hence that aspect can't really be accurately and concretely concluded, unfortunately. But let's continue on.
Where we run into a similar situation as the last section, where both of these characters are relatively lacking when it comes to feats in this department. Tobirama's main argument for his attack potency is his tandem paper bombs, which at both rounds is basically useless. While they are Edo Tensei, they can both regenerate from said jutsu, and while alive, Tobirama has no access to Edo Tensei without prep time, considering he does not have any other living body to sacrifice. There's this new argument I've seen people mention where they say Tobirama should already have bodies from his previous Edo Tensei uses in the past, but this is a flawed argument since it's quite literally unprovable. Not only do we never see Tobirama subbing in Edo one time, we don't know if he released the Edo Tensei after they were done nuking the battlefield or whatever he had them do, and I guess someone could just as easily make the argument that I can't claim it didn't happen, considering I never saw any of it, and that's fair. But that just leaves us in a state where we can't prove one way or the other, so we don't know, meaning neither of us could factor it into the battle without any evidence, so we should just ignore it. So yes, while it is a possibility, there's no way to give it any likelihood over its equally possible negative side. Other than that, he cut some of the God Tree roots less efficiently than Hiruzen, but albeit more efficiently than Minato. However, Minato claimed to be out of chakra at the time, which makes sense considering the God Tree just ripped the Kurama avatar off of him, and he just used a massive Rasengan with Naruto, was charging up a Biju Bomb, and used Flying Raijin to teleport somewhere around 10,000 people, which he does note when saying he was out of chakra. So we don't count this as Tobirama having an AP feat over Minato. Minato, as I mentioned at the beginning, sort of has the same issue feat-wise anyway. I'll go over statements for both here in a second, but Minato blows Obito's arm off, slashes directly through B's tentacle, and in the same moment is implied to have been able to damage the Raikage through his lightning armor. However, Sasuke also cuts through B's tentacle, and so does Obito. With the bar being in so many places that don't connect us to Tobirama, this feat essentially gets rendered useless when talking about this versus battle. Minato's blowing Obito's arm off, then subsequently stabbing him also leads nowhere, to be honest, since Obito was 14 at the time, and at every point post this feat where we could scale him, he has most certainly gotten stronger.
Of course.
Now, in the original script for the video, there was like 3 or 4 minutes of me going over why Obito got stronger, but it felt sort of tangential, so I cut it out. And I'm just gonna say, if you don't think he got stronger from Yellow Mask to Orange Mask, that's perfectly fine, because Orange Mask Obito also has 0 durability feats, outside of tanking a Suigetsu Sword Strike and then getting blown up by Konan's paper bombs while off guard, or while there's literally billions of them, whatever.
Right.
However, we know for a fact White Mask Obito got stronger because he says as much. The anime for Boruto also confirms that the Rinnegan is an amp by saying Sasuke quote-unquote lost power after losing his eye. And as
Yep.
for Minato cutting through
Certainly
the
not.
Raikage, this is more of an implication than anything, and even if you were to grant it as true, the Raikage gets much stronger after this, considering there is 21 years following this event, and he has had much time to get stronger, and we know that he wants to get stronger. So I'll conclude this section like this. In both battles, it's very hard to place either their attack potency at a consistent level, so we can take this one of two different ways. Say that they're both equal because of equally unquantifiable stats, or say AP doesn't matter too much to this fight and make it much more hacks based, which both of them have, that aren't necessarily AP based. I'm going to go with the latter here, since the first option requires a fairly big assumption that gives Minato a clear and unfair advantage, especially when it comes to their Edo Tensei forms. Since he has the 9 tails, that would make him the clear superior to Tobirama we made equal to base Minato, and although I like Minato, like I said, I would be completely fair. And now to get into what I'm sure tons of people clicked on the video for in the first place, speed. This
Here
is
we go.
far and away the most contentious part of the debate for whatever reason. This section will start off with debunks, since there are annoying arguments made by people who quite literally just like to wank off both of these characters for the sake of doing so.
Okay.
We'll start with Minato, since I think his argument is more fun to debunk than Tobirama's. The argument being that Minato can move as fast as a guy,
Oh, of course.
moving faster
Yeah.
than Madara's
Yeah.
true secret orbs is a feat. A lot of people would debunk this feat by saying Might Guy is simply slower in the air than he is on the ground, hence why Minato is able to keep up with him. This debunk is just 100% wrong. While it's true that Guy should be faster on the ground, it holds no relevance here, since anyone who actually reads and looks at the pages would know that outside of the Night Guy, Guy never touches the ground, when he's fighting Madara anyway. The entirety of the Sekizo barrage is done in the air, and for anyone who doesn't believe me, the panels will be on screen to show you that I'm correct. The
Yes.
real reason this argument does not work is because with the rest of these air movements, Guy is constantly kicking the air to either up or maintain his speed. But in the Minato example, he stops doing this and relies on the momentum from one last kickoff, while Minato tells him to just charge forward. That statement should make any attempt at arguing Guy could not evade or dodge invalid, because Minato is just telling him not to and that they will handle it. This is also just completely backed up by the fact that a few chapters before this, Ten Tails Madara speed blitzed Minato while he had Sage Mode on. Minato being faster than the true secret orbs, however, I don't really care to debunk. The only thing that they outspeed is Kamui's ability for Obito to absorb himself, which we know is slower than every other aspect of Kamui, and it's something Minato also outsped in his fight with Obito. And before anyone tries to argue that Kamui is amped up by 6 paths power Obito just took from Madara, that's not true either, because it's stated that the combination of Obito's Kamui plus Kakashi's Kamui made it twice as fast as it normally is.
Yep.
Kakashi, as far as I'm aware, has not received a single 6 paths amp, so I'm just kind of getting at the idea that this 6 paths Kamui isn't anything impressive. Other than that, 68 Guy outspeeds them, Lee when he throws the kunai outspeeds them, Kakashi's kunai kinda looks like it's moving on par with one at one point, and even though they outsped the Kamui itself, Obito himself also outspeeds them. There would also be arguments made like the fact that Jubito's Truth Seeker orbs were going to kill Naruto and Sasuke, but yes, while this is true, it lacks context. Naruto and Sasuke were being held in place, and even while they were, Naruto's chakra arm outspeeds them completely. He grabbed Sasuke and Minato, and then KCM Minato outspeeds them with a flying Raiji. Anyway, this is getting extremely tangential. You get the point. This is not an impressive speed feat for Minato, it's just consistent. Now for Tobirama's annoying speed feat. This is when he dodges Sage Mode Madara, and then the subsequent statement that Madara makes about his speed being the fastest at one point in the Shinobi world. But I went back and looked at an alternate translation of the manga, and it says something different. It only says that Tobirama was hailed as the fastest Shinobi. This changes it a bit, because being hailed as something doesn't necessarily mean it's true. There are people who hail me as the best Naruto scaler on YouTube. There are people who hold Swag Kage in the same regard, or maybe another YouTuber. Obviously the answer is me, but you get the point. Being hailed as something doesn't make it to be true. Now I will admit it's also not fair for me to just take this translation and run with it, since there isn't anything lending any credence to either of these, but it got me thinking. Let me go look at the raw manga for this and translate the kanji. I ran this through DeepL translations, and varying where I put the space at got different outcomes, but they all said virtually the same thing when talking about boasting. They all mentioned boast of. There were a couple other sites I tried that were saying some weird, incoherent sentences, but around this sentence, it was always very clear the part of proud of or boast of, not anything concrete like Viz may imply. Then I wanted to take it a step further, so I got on ChatGPT, a famous AI, and asked it to translate the statement, and it translated it to boasted about being the fastest ninja. And when I asked it to translate it again, it changed up the wording but still came to the same conclusion, just boast about. My friend Truth asked it with different wording and his translation came out a bit scuffed, but it was also the same and consistent about the boasted of wording. We were a bit skeptical and asked it how it was getting its translations. ChatGPT responded by saying that it uses a machine translation algorithm that has been trained on vast amounts of data in both the source and target languages to generate translations. As a language model, it is designed to identify patterns in language and generate text based on those patterns. It does, however, admit that it's important to take into account that machine translations can sometimes be less accurate or idiomatically sound than human translation, but that it does always try to improve and provide the most accurate translations possible. I do want to say that ChatGPT is fairly in line with the other translation of the manga, which was done by humans. I then asked the AI if the sentence in English implied that the person was boasting or was held as being the fastest. And without
Interesting
reading
strategy.
all again, I'll show what both me and my friend Truth got from this. You can pause to read if you want to. I'll also leave his channel linked in the description if you want to check him out. Anyway.
Alright, I kind of want to read this here. So, the Japanese sentence does not necessarily imply that the person was actually the fastest ninja. It only implies that the person boasted or was proud of their speed, and that they are now in a negative or unfortunate situation. The sentence does not provide any information about whether the person's boast was accurate or not. Very good strategy to establish credibility and reliability. Very, very well done. Let's continue on and I'll give my thoughts.
Wait, after all of this research, I think it's fair to say Madara is not saying Tobirama boasted the fastest speed of any shinobi, but that Tobirama boasted of having the fastest speed of any shinobi. However, it is important to mention you can also take boast to mean bragging about, aside from all the translating I just did, which means Viz isn't necessarily wrong, just interpreting it the other way is wrong interpretation. Aside from this, Madara could just simply be holding back on Tobirama when they first interact, and Tobirama reacting to his rod. Nothing implies Madara is going all out when doing this. He doesn't use his limbo clone or anything of the sort, at least on page.
Agreed.
It also sort of makes sense for Tobirama to be slower than Madara and Hashirama. Hashirama was able to subdue Tobirama with nothing
rationally
but
it makes
glance,
sense.
clearly demonstrating his superiority to him, and there would be no reason for Tobirama to be scared of someone he could simply just outspeed. The
Good
fear
point.
also very clearly is due to base Hashirama's chakra and not even Sage mode, as Tobirama makes the remark after calming down that Hashirama doesn't need to rile his chakra up. So we either have to bite the bullet and say Edo base Hashirama is faster than Sage mode Rinnegan Alive Madara, which is in no way implied, or just say that Tobirama is not as fast as Madara. The latter seems fair, especially considering that Madara literally turned Tobirama into a pincushion.
Yep.
Funnily enough, I'd also used almost the same argument to counter Tobirama scaling to Jubito. The argument that these two are relative though is sort of absurd. Jubito travels this big distance and Tobirama reacts to it and does basically a hand movement, and people think that they are relative. These are in no way a comparable distance. I'm only granting he reacted at this point. I'll mention another thing it could be in a second. The argument that Tobirama blitzed Jubito is also pretty stupid, considering it's based on how Jubito is not dodging when an unstable Jubito doesn't care about dodging attacks. After literally tearing the Hashirama wood clone in half, it just casually wraps Jubito up and he literally just stands there while they set up the rest of the attack.
Yep.
Now, without granting Tobirama reacted in this moment, you can say he may have put the FTG seal on him after letting off 10 of paper bombs before his body disintegrated or something like that. You get the point, it's not really a feat for Tobirama. There's also the possibility Jubito isn't moving at full speed. At this point, the Ten Tails is in control, not Obito himself.
Alright, so there's a couple things I want to touch on. First of all, I gotta go back to the strategy that Six used for establishing the translation of Madara's statement as far as Tobirama's speed is concerned. Unless you understand Japanese linguistics and the very language itself, the strategy that Six used is quite possibly the best strategy you could possibly come up with, right? ChatGPT and AI in general is trained, right? It's inputted with training data, and as more sentences, words, and other linguistic aspects are fed into these AI tools, they become more and more accurate, right? AI is a quickly evolving linguistic interpreter and linguistic translator, right? So ChatGPT is a very famous algorithm, a very successful algorithm, I would say, even in the eyes of the normal populace that's not involved in the tech business or tech industry, right? So I think Six going this route and also establishing several tests with an AI of this caliber suggests that Madara more than likely was only saying that Tobirama's speed was hailed or considered to be the fastest, right? He never said you were the fastest. That's a very important distinction in the semantical meaning when comparing the two possibilities is quite significantly different, right? If you only consider Madara to have said your speed was boasted about, then at best you can only conclude that Tobirama's speed was respected. It doesn't necessarily imply that he was the fastest of his time, right? That's a very important distinction. Furthermore, narratively, it holds as well, because Six made a good point. If Tobirama was faster, why would he be intimidated by his brother? Why would he be intimidated by Madara? Why would the notion be that Tobirama and Madara were the strongest shinobi of their time if there's an individual that could simply just outspeed them and blitz them, right? So when looking at the strategy of logical deduction that Six took, plus the empirical evidence revolving around Tobirama, Hashirama, and Madara, the best conclusion to come to is that Tobirama was not faster than Hashirama and Madara. That he was not faster than them, right? That's the best and highest guaranteed claim that you can come to based off the empirical evidence provided and based off the most accurate translations and interpretations that you can come to thanks to unbiased, reliable third parties such as ChatGPT, right? That's the best conclusion you can come to, right? A unbiased, non-subjective tool like ChatGPT will give you the most likely interpretation. Now, is AI 100% always correct? Absolutely not. There's no such thing as a perfectly accurate AI tool that can assess any such situation. That doesn't exist in the industry. But they are very, very accurate and have a success rate far beyond that of humans, right? Human error will always be present, right? It'll always be present. And computers are more consistent and more reliable. AI is more consistent and more reliable than human minds are. That's the beauty of the computer industry. And that's the beauty of the technological innovations that have come to be. Right? So Six going that route is a very good route to take. Quite possibly the best route to take. Besides blatantly going to Kishimoto and asking him himself and asking him, what did Madara say here? Besides that, going this route is possibly the best strategy you can go. So I agree with Six completely. His induction, right, is the most guaranteed. And he proved that very well. Now, the second point I want to touch upon before I continue with the video is Tobirama being scaled to Jubito. I hear it all the time in the fandom. Oh, Tobirama was able to blitz Jubito. Oh, Tobirama's relative to Jubito, etc. Absolutely not. Jubito has a fluctuating power level. His power level is not consistent. And there's plenty of narrative events that take place to safely conclude that his power level is constantly fluctuating. From the very beginning of the war arc, as soon as Obito sees Naruto, there is a mental conflict taking place within his mind. And what further proves that is the very fact that he is talking to himself within his mind, trying to fight the doubts that are creeping in because of Naruto's ideology, which paralleled his own when he was a good guy back in his youth, right? So there is a constant mental conflict within Jubito. We see sporadic events. We see sporadic fluctuations. At one point, he's getting tagged by Tobirama. And at another point, he's blitzing Hashirama, Tobirama, Minato, and he isn't. It's clear that there's a fluctuation in power. If he goes from getting blitzed by Tobirama to obliterating all the Hokage like that, it's clear that there's a fluctuating power level. And to state that there is not is disingenuous. You're clearly disregarding and dismissing the blatant empirical events that are in your face to establish that Jubito has a fluctuating power level. It's clear as day, right? So I'm glad Six is touching upon that as well, because people love to use that for Tobirama. To me, it's a very disingenuous tactic to utilize. But let's continue now.
and it's just starting to learn about its power and how to focus it. There was also a statement from Minato a bit later in the fight saying that the Ten Tails hadn't completely synced with its Jinchuriki yet, which only further backs this up. Nothing about this scene indicates he's going all out, although admittedly nothing indicates he's holding back either, aside from it maybe being implicative from Tobirama being weaker than Hashirama in the argument I mentioned earlier. But
Right.
Jubito himself shows no sign of holding back or going all out, so it's just a bit ambiguous. But obviously, due to the earlier argument, I'm going to say he is probably just holding back. I could also bring
More
up
than
how
likely.
Hiruzen reacts to Jubito later on, and Minato is faster than him, but that'd be pointless considering this is also a pretty big distance as well. When Tobirama teleports to Jubito from behind and teleports him away, that also isn't a speed feat, it's literally just teleportation. This is also the same with the feat of Naruto and Tobirama teleporting him to Jubito's back to hit him with the Rasengan. All Tobirama does here is teleport, nothing else. At max, this is a speed feat for Sage Naruto, but even then it's probable Jubito was just off guard considering later he can combat KCM2 Sage Mode Naruto and Sasuke at the same time. Alright, now that all of the debunks are out of the way, let's get into actually scaling the character's speed.
Okay.
Funnily enough, I've already covered the majority of the relevant speed arguments here in the debunk section, but we still have two left that are the most valid for each character. I think anyway. Is Minato seemingly outspeeding all of the Hokage to the battlefield, and Tobirama seemingly being faster than KCM Minato. We'll talk about Tobirama first here. There are a couple of arguments to counter this, but we'll start with the most popular, that being Minato is mentally dazed during this exchange, since he was upset about finding out Obito was the masked man that attacked his family, which is directly stated in the data books. Everyone should know your mental state is tied greatly to your chakra, so much
Absolutely.
so that it can nerf or amp you depending on your feelings at the time. Such as Kid Naruto getting stronger from aspiration alone, or your chakra quote unquote getting muddied whenever you lie, according to Karin. There was also Hiruzen versus Orochimaru, where Hiruzen was mentally nerfed due to him being sad about fighting his student, and then Kakashi as well during his interaction with Sasuke after Sasuke killed Danzo. Your mental state ties into how you fight as well as how strong you are, so Tobirama outsped a nerfed Minato is basically what I'm getting at. Saying he outsped Sasuke and Naruto is also invalid, seeing as they don't run away or grab the orb. Sasuke opts for a different type of defense by using his Susanoo and trying to wrap Naruto up as well. So while it's undoubtedly true that Tobirama did outspeed Minato, Minato is not at full power. I think at this section it'd be important for me to give Tobirama his credit, since while in the end none of his attacks were really effective in taking down the threats, a lot of them provided the group with intel that they would need in the fight. Well, it is true that both Naruto and Tobirama figured out that Gamakichi syrup didn't disappear and get the idea that Sage Jutsu might work on Jubito. I think it's fair to say that without the assistance of Tobirama's flying Raijin, Naruto would not have been able to test this theory at that time. Also, like I mentioned earlier, Tobirama's teleporting a True Secret Orb and trying to go for a DKO on Obito with it and his shadow clone is not a speed feat since it's just using teleportation. It does, however, let them know that using Obito's jutsu against him probably isn't going to work. Moving on to Minato outspeeding the other Kage is quite literally just true, with Tobirama even saying as much, and I'm sure everyone has heard by now that the word Tobirama actually uses here is body flicker and not supposed to be meaning flying Raijin. I've heard people try to counter this by saying that while all the other Hokage ran to the battlefield, Minato simply threw kunai over and over like ender pearls to get to the battlefield. Not only is this not implied anywhere at all, it would then mean that Minato's kunai can travel faster than all the other Hokage's body flickers, which does not go well for the Tobirama side of the argument either, but I do not believe it. However, this is just a travel speed feat, but B makes an interesting statement that implies to me Minato used body flicker in battle. After Naruto very first acquires KCM, he goes for a blitz attempt on Kisame, and upon his success at landing a hit, B comments with that teleportation jutsu, first it back quite a smash, that was just like the yellow flash, implying Minato also used the body flicker when he fought, and the first it back quite a smash implies he also used it as an opening move to attack someone. I think it's important to note that B knows how flying Raijin works, via seals and whatnot, so he should know that that's not what Naruto is doing here. Yamato somewhat backs this up as well, but I'll leave it up to your interpretation. But after finding out Naruto got stuck in the wall because he hit it too hard, Yamato comments it looks like he doesn't have the fourth skills yet, which implies to me while he might have the technique and fighting style, he doesn't have the same skill with it as Minato. Minato also outspeeds the Hokage by a great deal. He has a conversation with Naruto and deals with the Ten Tails Biju Bomb easily before they show up. In this scene, Minato also outspeeds his own flying Raijin, implying he can adjust the speed of the jutsu with his interpretation of the technique. Minato teleports the Biju Bomb away, comes back, tells everyone to brace for an impending explosion. Then we see the Biju Bomb come into frame on a kunai he had previously left and blow up. I'm not going to claim that this is a speed feat because after all, he did do this with another flying Raijin. So like I said, it's just probable that he can adjust the speed of flying Raijin rather than him being faster than teleportation. So we'll obviously be granting that Tobirama can react to his own movement, like when he's using body flicker, since he quite literally has to move and run with that. So we'll have his reaction speed bare minimum at that level, with Minato's movement being able to outspeed his reactions in base, considering how he was able to outdo that travel. We never see Tobirama react to anything that can concretely scale above his travel speed, so I think this is fair. Obviously, winning a battle through speed alone isn't really possible, so let's get started on our final section, the abilities portion. Alright, this section should be fairly brief as well. These guys don't have too many abilities worth mentioning. Minato has Sage Mode, but he's not too good at it, and doesn't even use it in his life or death battle against Obito, so he probably won't use it here.
Yep.
He has the Rasengan, but as we went over, his AP isn't too reliable in this fight, so we just have to go over his hacks. I originally had a part in this video where I went over him and Tobirama extremely in depth with how Minato is better at flying Raijin, but instead I'll just show this scan that says Minato handles the jutsu to perfection, improved upon the mastery, and can teleport more people with his FTG. The really important part of this section is Minato's ability to use sealing jutsu, which he learned from Kushina, and is said to be really good at. The Raikage also comments on how he knew Minato studied sealing jutsu, implying that he had used them in combat, since I doubt that Minato was just going around telling people that information. It also is likely that these were combat sealing jutsu, seeing as they were Uzumaki variety, and the Uzumaki clan was hunted to their extinction for their sealing jutsu, which according to Kushina made them greatly feared. You can also somewhat imply he used it in a combat setting after the Nine Tails impaled him and Kushina on Naruto's birthday. Minato also did not use the Reaper Death Seal to seal the Nine Tails inside of Naruto. He only did that to split it in half and seal one half inside of himself. Correct. On Naruto and the other half of Kurama, he used something called an 8 sign seal, which the databook gives us more information on this jutsu, saying that it could be used to seal a giant enemy or evil spirit needed to be sealed away, and that they could be sealed into a human body or object. If you think these objects are specific sealing jutsu items like scrolls or something like that, it's likely Minato would just have some on him due to this jutsu, and they would just be standard equipment. If not, I guess Minato could just seal Tobirama into himself or into a kunai and become the Tobirama Jinchuriki or something. But yeah, you get the idea. This is basically what I'm claiming as Minato's Wincon. As for Tobirama's Wincon, I think the page here implies that Tobirama can interact with the soul of even a living person, so he should be able to put an end to an Edo Tensei if need be, and Minato himself, since they both have souls. And it's fairly consistent to say that Tobirama can interact with souls, considering we know he invented Edo Tensei, which literally does that. Other than this, I've gone over why his Edo Tensei and tandem paper bombs won't matter in either round of the fight we discussed. He obviously has access to flying Raijin, albeit a less potent version than Minato's, and tons of other forbidden jutsu that we don't know about, and not even being charitable, just being honest, he should be able to use the multi-shadow clone technique, considering he also made that jutsu. I know that the war arc, he only made 2 clones, but this was while he was keeping up the 4 Crimson Ray barrier and in a weakened Edo Tensei state, so just take those into account when considering if you can use the jutsu or not. I think I've made it fairly clear through the scaling and Wincon portions of the video who I think would win this fight, and it's Minato. I've been scaling mostly base Minato feats for the majority of this video, and I did mention Edo Minato would be used in one of the rounds who has access to KCM. So for that battle, just scale Minato up based on how many times stronger you think a person gets in KCM. But that's all for the video.
Great scaling. This is a great video. Great work. Very thorough.
That isn't just a comparison, because I do think that they both deserve their own analysis and have things worth mentioning that just would not be relevant to this video. But other than that, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And as always, have a nice day.
Alright, there you guys have it, folks. I definitely want to give my thoughts on this. So 6 basically illuminated my previous statement before I reacted to his video. The empirical advantage is for Minato. Tobirama admits inferiorities in terms of speed. It's stated in several pieces of canonical literature that Minato has perfected the flying Raijin, implying that he's better at it than Tobirama. And there is an inductive analysis and argument to be made that because he's perfected it, what comes with that is a faster flying Raijin. Again, that can't be proven 100%, but when we hear the word improve, right, what comes to mind? All the aspects that are involved with such a jutsu should have been improved as well, right? That's why he perfected it. He has allowed it to reach an optimal level. And what's the flying Raijin known for? It's speed, it's finesse. He's improved that, right? So we can make the argument that his flying Raijin is faster because of the statements in those canonical pieces of literature, right? So we have that as well. And then we have their actual physical feats, right? Minato, in base, is able to go against someone, like I said, that is a light timer in the Raikage. And that was as a Jonin. He's probably even faster as a Hokage, right? Tobirama fell to Kin and Gin. We see, as Edos, to be fair, who they lose to. They lost to Darui and company. Yeah, to be fair, they didn't have their entire unit, but they were clearly the strongest of their unit, or the unit wouldn't be called the Kinkaku and Gikaku unit, right? I think it's safe to say that they were the leaders of that unit, hence the strongest of their unit, right? So for them to lose to someone of Darui's caliber and his company, right, with the individuals that helped him, it allows us to deduce that someone of Minato's caliber, who casually reacted to a light timer, would most likely defeat someone of Tobirama's caliber, right? So all these empirical pieces of evidence you bring together, right? You string them together to come to the best and most accurate conclusion. That being that Minato would triumph over Tobirama. And to even further reinforce that, 6, which I think is the very best part of this video, the whole video was great, but especially the part where he attempts to translate Madara's statement when he's speaking about Tobirama's speed after he pins him down. I think that was the most thorough and well-built deduction in this entire video. All the deductions were well-built. That one was very, very well-built. Going to a unbiased, extremely reliable third party. That's not even human. How much better can it get? Besides going to Kishimoto himself, the writer of the very such that comic that we're discussing here, right? That's a very good strategy. And also asking that third party more than once in different ways what this Japanese sentence means, right? It establishes more credibility, more reliability, and allows you to more safely agree with 6's point and the most likely interpretation of Madara's statement, right? I think that was a very, very good strategy, a very good one, I might add, right? Going with AI, right? AI is more accurate, objectively, than a human mind, right? AI is constantly evolving. AI can evolve at a quicker rate, right? It can absorb more training data than any human mind can and evolve to give more accurate and reliable output, right? The more input it takes, the more accurate output it will release to you when you ask for it. So using ChatGPT, and I believe he used other websites and tools to further establish the most likely translation, was a very, very good strategy. And I basically agree with 6 100% on this video. The only part I can play devil's advocate on is when 6 says that you can't use teleportation feats as speed feats, right? I would play devil's advocate and say, well, the time of activation would have to matter, right? For example, you have opponent A and opponent B. They both have flying Raijin. One is able to activate it faster than the other. Hence, that one is faster than this one, right? I would argue that activation time matters as well, despite it being slight, because unironically, these individuals are so fast that matters, right? It can come down to that if their speed is contentious, right? It can come down to who activates their flying Raijin first, right? You could counter me and say, well, Minato's flying Raijin itself is just faster, so the activation time wouldn't necessarily be important. Well, it depends on the gap between the two's activation time. How large is that gap? And furthermore, what's the gap between their flying Raijins? How much faster is Minato than Tobirama, right? What's the quantification to represent the numerical difference between Minato and Tobirama's speed? Well, we do know that there is some arbitrary gap in that Minato more than likely has the advantage in terms of speed. But how large is that gap? Is it substantial? Is it so substantial that his activation time and his flying Raijin are faster than Tobirama's activation time and flying Raijin? We don't know that per se. But again, Minato has the empirical advantage overall. There is more for him. You have more to create a more valid and accurate claim and conclusion, as opposed to Tobirama. If you take the antithesis stance and go with Tobirama, you're going to have to make some speculation. There's going to be more speculation in the event that you try to argue for Tobirama. The arguments are more difficult to construct due to the empirical disadvantage for Tobirama. There is less to go based off of. There is less empirical evidence to reference for him to create an accurate and reliable conclusion to imply that Tobirama would beat Minato. The canonical literature itself implies that Minato is just an upgraded Tobirama. He's better at the flying rising. Tobirama admits it himself. His feats are more impressive, etc. It's as simple as that, right? So for all the Tobirama and fans out there, it's more difficult to make an argument for Tobirama. Now, of course, if you're in a debate setting and you're debating a novice debater, maybe you could come up with something and defeat him and give the notion that Tobirama is the victor. But if you're going against an individual with even decent knowledge on Naruto, it's going to be very difficult to conclude that Tobirama defeats Minato in an accurate fashion. It's going to be very, very difficult. But yeah, folks, I think this video was very well done. And very, very well done. Very impressed by the logical deductions made, by the strategies to reach these logical deductions. Very good extrapolations. Overall, very good video. And I agree with Six completely. Even before the video I said, there's just more for Minato, empirically speaking. Empiricism will triumph over rationalism, for the most part, especially in fictional-based realities where sets of datums are limited, right? We're not in such a reality. We don't see everything take place. There are limitations to writing, there are limitations to cinema, to animations, etc. All we could do is establish the most accurate claim and conclusion based on the empirical evidence that is available. That's the best you could do. If you go outside of that, you're going into the realm of less accurate and more faulty logical strategies. You're going into speculation. You're going into possible fallacies. And if you really go far enough, you're going to sophistry, right? So you got to be wary of that if you're trying to accurately discuss anything, not just anime. So I think that's going to wrap it up, though, folks. This was a very good video. I enjoyed it thoroughly. And let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'm sure there's a couple of Tobirama fans out there that are still not convinced. Feel free to join my Discord, discuss it with me or anybody else in there. People are willing to discuss it. But that's going to wrap it up, folks, and I'll catch you in the next video. This is J3 signing out. Peace.